Hello, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. From today, we will discuss such questions asked in the UPSC mains examination of 2018, which we at Rao's IAS have tried to cover through DNS, that is, Video Lessons of Daily News Simplified, through our Focus magazine, in our test conducted for QIPs, that is, Quality Improvement Programs, as well as FLTs. In our discussion on mains question, we'll try to understand what was UPSC trying to ask in a particular question, whether the question asked was in news as an issue of national or international importance, and lastly, how to attempt such question in a structured format. So today, let's start our discussion on this particular question asked on Finance Commission in GS Paper 2. Now, the issue of terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission was very much in news for the last 6 to 8 months, and we had tried to cover these topics extensively in our DNS videos as well as in our Focus magazine. Since some of the terms of reference, specifically with respect to choosing of year of census, that of 2011, created certain controversies. Hence, this issue always appeared in our newspaper for the last 6 to 8 months. As you can see, this particular news on the terms of reference of 15th Finance Commission was covered comprehensively on the video dated 16th April 2018, and again the same issue was again covered on 23rd August 2018. So you see, we have tried to discuss every particular issue with respect to terms of reference, particularly with reference to population data as well as fiscal federalism. As you can see here also, the issue of population data and the issue of fiscal federalism with respect to revenue deficit, impact of increased tax devolution by 14th Finance Commission, imperatives of National Development Program including New India 2022, borrowing of states under Article 293, performance-based incentives to states for implementation of flagship schemes, control on populist measures by the government. Now this control on populist measures again became a point of controversy with respect to terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. Further, this news on regional discontent on terms of reference of 15th Finance Commission was also covered on 13th April 2018, where even a prelims question which was asked on 14th Finance Commission was discussed. And again, this topic was covered on 19th May 2018, specifically with reference to terms of reference as well as horizontal allocation through principle of equalization. Now coming to the Focus magazine, this topic was covered in May 2018 edition of the Focus magazine, and the topic under which it was covered was 15th Finance Commission and Fiscal Federalism in India, where it said that the Government of India, with the approval of President of India, has constituted the 15th Finance Commission as per Article 280 Clause 1. This commission will be headed by Shri N.K. Singh. The 15th Finance Commission shall recommend devolution of taxes among states for a period of 5 years commencing 1st April 2020, and the Commission shall use the population data of 2011 while making its recommendations. So we understand that all the contentious issues was highlighted in this particular article which appeared in the Focus magazine in May edition of 2018. Further in this news, we also covered about emergence of certain disputes, mandate of the 15th Finance Commission, terms of reference of this 15th Finance Commission which was asked by UPSC, and also certain issues with respect to fiscal federalism, where it says that fiscal federalism refers to the allocation, devolution and distribution of revenue between different states in India based on the recommendation of Finance Commission. Now further, a similar question was asked in the QIP, that is Quality Improvement Program. The question asked was allocation of resources to states by Finance Commission under Article 280 in a way restricts role of state and limits the idea of cooperative federalism in India. Discuss. So here also we tried to ask this question considering the fact that terms of reference had become a talking point with respect to certain states, and hence in this aspect the issue of Finance Commission was actually important. So now, how to attempt this particular question asked by UPSC? The question was very straightforward. It asked, how is the Finance Commission of India constituted? And what do you know about the terms of reference of the recently constituted Finance Commission? Discuss. So here you could have explained about the Constitution of Finance Commission under Article 280. Then you could have mentioned briefly about the mandate of Finance Commission and then discussed in detail about terms of reference of 15 Finance Commission and also some of the terms which were quite contentious with respect to first selection of year of census and secondly control on populist measures. So both these terms of reference created quite a controversy with respect to devolution of funds. So about Constitution of Finance Commission, you could have discussed the President of India at the expiration of every fifth year or earlier constitute a finance commission which shall consist of a chairman and four other members to be appointed by the President, and the commission shall make recommendations with respect to distribution between union and states of the net proceeds of taxes and allocations between state of respective share of such proceeds. Further, the principles which should govern the grants in aid under Article 275 of the Constitution, measures needed to augment the consolidated fund of a state to supplement the resources of panchayats and municipalities, and review of the current status of finance, deficit, debt levels and cash balances by the Finance Commission. Then briefly could have mentioned about the mandate of Finance Commission, that is to review the current status, recommend fiscal consolidation roadmap and foster higher inclusive growth through these recommendations. And lastly, could have mentioned in detail about these terms of reference, specifically with respect to proposing measurable performance based incentives for states. So we finally understand that the issue of 15th Finance Commission and its terms of reference, which created quite a lot of controversy, was an important issue, and this was why UPSC directly asked a question in GS paper. With this, let's move on to our daily news discussions. The first news appears on page number 1. The news reads, Saffron marigold is the color of sacrifice, and marigold will be the symbol of remembrance for Indian soldiers martyred in the First World War. Now this particular topic in our prelims examination can be covered in the current events of national and international importance as well as history of India, and in your mains examination this forms a part of GS paper 1 under Indian heritage and culture as well as history of the world including the world wars. So in this analysis, let us discuss very briefly about marigold as a color of sacrifice and certain basics with respect to First World War. So as discussed, marigold has been chosen as the symbol of India's sacrifice at the centenary of end of First World War. As you know that 2018 forms the 100 years of ending of the First World War, which ended in November 1918. Now marigold represents a uniquely Indian symbol that will allow the citizens of India as well as the international diaspora to acknowledge the valor and sacrifice made by Indian soldiers during the First World War. Now India Remembers project is a joint endeavor between United Service Institution of India, that is USI, as well as Commonwealth War Graves Commission, that is CWGC. Now India Remembers project is a part of India and the Great War, which is a centenary commemoration project initiated by USI, that is United Service Institution of India, in 2014 with the support of Ministry of External Affairs and also in association with British High Commission. Now the Indian War Memorial, which is to be inaugurated at Villers-Guislain in France, also has a bronze marigold wreath as an integral part of its design. So we understand that marigold has been chosen as a symbol of India's sacrifice at the centenary of the end of the First World War. Now in this aspect, let's understand certain basics fact with respect to First World War. Now over 30 nations declared war between 1914 as well as 1918. Now majority of the nations joined on the side of the Allies, including Serbia, Russia, France, Britain, Italy, as well as the United States of America. And these allies were opposed by the Central Powers. And the Central Powers constituted of Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, as well as the erstwhile Ottoman Empire, currently Turkey. And the First World War ended with the signing of armistice on 11th November 1918. These pictures represents the newspapers of those times where it said armistice signed, end of the war, Berlin seized by revolutionists, and here it says peace, world war ends as Germany signs armistice. Since the signing of the armistice in November 1918, the flower poppy was adopted as a symbol of remembrance as it grew widely in Europe, and also because of the fact that most of the battles were fought in Europe. So the signing of the armistice on 11th November 1918 actually ended the First World War. So this news, where marigold has been chosen as a symbol of remembrance for Indian soldiers, becomes important, and a simple question can be asked on which flower has been chosen as a symbol of remembrance to commemorate the centenary of end of First World War, where Indian soldiers were martyred. So options can be given like rose, marigold, tulip, lotus. So you would know that marigold would be the right answer in this particular kind of question. Hence, this news becomes extremely important. With this, let's move on to the next news. Now these two news appears, this one on page number 3 about Simlipal Park, and this one on page number 7 about Satkosia Tiger Reserve. Now in this aspect, let's understand certain basic facts with respect to Simlipal National Park, which is in the Mayurbhanj district in Orissa, and also about Satkosia Tiger Reserve, which is also in the state of Odisha. This particular news is with respect to man-animal conflict, where some of the villages in Odisha were attacked by tigers. It says that this particular tiger, that is Sundari, was translocated from Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh to Odisha's Satkosia Tiger Reserve in June this year. So in this aspect, let's learn about Simlipal National Park as well as Satkosia Tiger Reserve. So in this picture we see about Simlipal National and Tiger Reserve. So it is a very large area in the state of Odisha, and this entire area covers a Simlipal Tiger Reserve, Simlipal Wildlife Sanctuary, Simlipal National Park, Simlipal Biosphere Reserve, as well as Mayurbhanj Elephant Reserves. So all these reserves as well as wildlife sanctuaries and national parks become critically important to understand from a UPSC point of view, as questions can be asked. We will discuss few questions after discussing about Satkosia Tiger Reserve as well. It says that the Satkosia Tiger Reserve has been spread along the gorge over mighty river Mahanadi in the state of Odisha, and it was established in 1976 as a wildlife sanctuary. It further says that the name Satkosia originates from two words, that is, first Sat meaning 7 and second Kos meaning 2 miles, which indicates the length of the gorge as 14 miles or 22 kilometers. So this entire area was declared as a Satkosia Tiger Reserve in 2007. The Satkosia Tiger Reserve comprises of two adjoining wildlife sanctuaries, namely Satkosia God Sanctuary and Baisipalli Sanctuary. And this particular reserve has been spread over 4 districts, that of Angul, Cuttack, Naweed as well as Baud. This area is also part of Mahanadi Elephant Reserve. Another important fact is that Satkosia is the meeting point of two biogeographic regions of India, namely the Deccan Peninsula as well as the Eastern Ghats, and both these contributes immensely to our rich biodiversity. Further, the area of Satkosia Tiger Reserve supports moist deciduous forest, dry deciduous forest as well as moist peninsular sal forest. So these three information with respect to kinds of forest in Satkosia Tiger Reserves become extremely crucial with respect to your prelims examination. Now after going through the discussions, let's try to answer these two questions. First, consider the following statements. Simlipal National Park is situated in West Bengal. No, we know that this is situated in Odisha. Second, Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve is situated in Madhya Pradesh. Yes, this is correct. Third, Satkosia Tiger Reserve is situated in Odisha. Yes, this is also correct. So here the correct answer is C, that is 2 and 3. Now let's read this question very carefully. Which of the following statements about Satkosia Tiger Reserve are correct? It is spread along the gorge over river Damodar. No, this is incorrect, as it is spread over the river Mahanadi. Second, it is the meeting point of two biogeographic regions of India. Yes, this is correct. As you can see that Satkosia is the meeting point of two biogeographic regions of India, namely the Deccan Peninsula as well as the Eastern Ghats. And third, the entire area of the reserve supports moist deciduous forest only. No, this again is incorrect. As you can see, the area of Satkosia Tiger Reserve supports moist deciduous forest, dry deciduous forest as well as moist peninsular sal forest. So this area support both dry as well as moist deciduous forest. Hence, first as well as third statements are incorrect. So the question was select the correct answer using the code given below. So here D becomes our correct answer, that is 2 only. So we understand how questions can be framed on these different national parks, that is Simlipal National Park, Satkosia Tiger Reserve as well as Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. Hence both these news becomes extremely important. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 14 as a data analytics with respect to jobs in the formal sector, where employment scenario in the formal sector accounts for roughly 10% of India's labor force. In your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of economic and social development, whereas in your mains, this forms a part of GS paper 3 under Indian economy. So this data analytics effectively pertains with employment scenario in the formal sector, and it also looks at the jobs growth rate in the corporate sector over the last 4 years. So let's go through some of the highlights of this article as presented through a data analytics. So the first point with respect to this data analytics is about inconsistent job growth rate. It says that the employment growth rate has remained inconsistent over the last 4 years, and on an average only 0.2 million jobs were added annually to the formal workforce between financial year 2015 and financial year 2018. As you can see in this particular picture about the inconsistency in the employment growth in the last 4 years. Further, this article highlights about reasons for the decline in job growth rate in financial year 2018. It says that the decrease in job growth rate in the financial year 2018 can be attributed to the fact that more than 50% of the companies either saw negative growth or an unchanged growth. So effectively it says that more than 50% of the companies did not see a positive growth. As you can see, the maximum percentage is with respect to negative growth, and some of them are also with respect to an unchanged growth, whereas there were few companies which registered a growth rate of 0 to 5%. Further, this article highlights that despite the inconsistent growth rate, there were also certain job creation in financial year 2018. It says that despite the fact that more than 50% of the companies saw negative or unchanged growth rate in the present year, despite this financial year also saw a job growth rate of 3.8%. And the reason for this can be attributed to higher growth of jobs in certain sectors of the economy, which were able to compensate for the decline in job growth in other sectors. So it says that the jobs in finance and retail grew more than 12%. So we saw a job growth rate in the finance as well as the retail sectors, which effectively helped in boosting the overall growth numbers, and this compensated for the loss in telecom, trading and similar sectors. So effectively it says that finance, retail, construction, infrastructure, they all saw certain job growth rate, whereas trading, telecom and even photographic products saw a decline in job growth rate. And lastly, this article also highlights about a linkage between sales and employment growth rate. Generally, there is a direct relationship between growth rate as well as sales. As more there is sales, more will be the growth rate. But again, there was some sector which saw a different phenomena. It says that finance sector was the only exception with negative sales growth but positive job growth. So for the finance sector, the sales growth was negative, whereas the job growth rate was positive. Further, healthcare, textile and IT sectors saw single-digit growth rate both in sales as well as employment. And retail sector experienced double-digit growth rate in both sales as well as employment numbers. So retail sector saw double-digit growth both in terms of growth rate as well as in terms of. So these different sectors gives an idea about the job growth as well as growth of sales of different sectors of the Indian economy. However, this particular data is only with respect to employment scenario in formal sector of the economy. Hence, it does not include the informal sector. Now, in the year 2016, in GS paper 3, a similar question was asked with respect to formal sector. The question was, how globalization has led to the reduction of employment in the formal sector of the Indian economy. is increased informalization detrimental to the development of the country? So this particular question becomes quite important and relevant with respect to the data which has been provided in this particular article in the formal sector of Indian companies. That this analytics becomes extremely important just to understand how these different sectors of the economy grow and how this also impacts and affects the employment in these respective sectors. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news appears on page number 18. The news reads, Climate Fund allots $1 billion for poor nations. In this, it says that at the close of the 4-day meeting of the board decided to launch the process for the Green Climate Fund's first formal replenishment, making a key moment in the development of world's largest dedicated fund for climate action. So this particular news is with respect to Green Climate Fund, which has allotted $1 billion for poor nations. In your prelims examination, this forms a part of general issues of environment as well as climate change, and in your mains, it forms a part of GS paper 3 under environment, specifically conservation, environmental pollution as well as degradation. Now this topic of Green Climate Fund is extremely important as a question was asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2015. We'll also go through this particular question, but first of all, let us understand about this decision on Green Climate Fund. It says that the Green Climate Fund invests $1 billion for developing country climate action and launches first replenishment. Now this meeting also approved 19 new projects, including a program to protect freshwater resources in Bahrain. The meeting also approved first Green Climate Fund climate finance for China. So let us also understand certain basics with respect to Green Climate Fund. Then we'll see the question asked in the year 2015. Now it says that the Green Climate Fund is a globe fund created to support developing countries in responding to climate change. So the Green Climate Fund is a global fund created to support developing countries so that they can combat the ill effects of climate change. And this can be done by investing in low emission and climate resilient development. Green Climate Fund was established to limit or reduce greenhouse gas emissions in developing countries and also to help vulnerable societies so that they can adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change. So effectively, it also helps the vulnerable societies in adapting to the impact of climate change. Thus, the fund is mandated to make an ambitious contribution to the united global response to climate change. The Green Climate Fund was set up in the year 2010 by 194 countries who were parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and this was as a part of Convention's financial mechanism. This fund pays particular attention to the needs of society that are highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, in particular the least developed countries, small island developing states, as well as the African countries. Another important aspect is that this fund's investments can be in the form of either grants, loans, equity, or even guarantees. So this becomes a very crucial information with respect to our prelims examination. Now the initiatives taken through this Green Climate Fund will also help in keeping the global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. And this was also agreed in the Paris Agreement of 2015. It says when the Paris Agreement was reached in 2015, the Green Climate Fund was given an important role in serving the agreement and also supporting the goal of keeping climate change well below 2 degrees Celsius. So this again becomes a very crucial fact to understand with respect to Green Climate Fund. Now coming to the question asked by UPSC, this particular question on Green Climate Fund was asked in the year 2015. It says which of the following statements regarding GCF are correct. First, it is intended to assist the developing countries in adaptation and mitigation practices to counter climate change. Yes, this is correct as we have already seen. Second, it is founded under the aegis of UNEP, that is United Nations Environment Programme, OECD, Asian Development Bank and World Bank. No, this is incorrect as it was initiated at UNFCCC. As you can see, the Green Climate Fund was set up by 194 countries in 2010 who were parties to UNFCCC. So in this, A was the correct answer. Further, this particular question was asked in the year 2016 and this was on intended national determined contribution. It says the term intended nationally determined contributions is sometimes seen in the news in the context of. In this, B was the correct answer, that is, plan of action outlined by countries of the world to combat climate change. So we see questions have been asked on climate change in successive years. In 2015, the question was on Green Climate Fund, and in 2016, the question was asked on INDC, that is Intended Nationally Determined Contribution, which is a plan of action outlined by countries of the world to combat climate change. So we understand that this particular news on Green Climate Fund becomes extremely important. And lastly, let us also try to locate Bahrain in a map. Now Bahrain is an island in the Persian Gulf, if you can see in this particular picture. And Bahrain is very close to Qatar, and this is in the Persian Gulf. So it is also important to know where these meetings are taking place. So this particular meeting on GCF, that is Green Climate Fund, took place in Bahrain. Hence in this aspect, the location of Bahrain also becomes very important. With this, let's move on to the next news. The next news also appears on page number 18. The news reads, China's melting glacier draws tourists amid climate worries. In this particular news, scientists have highlighted that Baishui Glacier, which is in China, has now become world's fastest melting glacier, and this is a cause of concern because this particular glacier is situated around third pole. Now this is a cause of concern as this entire area feeds water to lots of rivers. So in this aspect, this particular news with respect to environment change in the Baishui Glacier becomes a very important concern with respect to our environment. In your prelims paper, this forms a part of paper 1 under general issues on environment, ecology, biodiversity as well as climate change, and in GS paper 3 on conservation as well as degradation and environmental impact assessment. In this news analysis, let us understand the importance of this third pole and also the fact that how this entire area feeds the rivers of this particular region. The third pole is a region in the Central Asia with the world's third largest store of ice after Antarctica and Greenland. The third pole glaciers are vital to billions of people spreading across from Afghanistan to Vietnam. Asia's 10 largest rivers, including Yangtze, Yellow, Mekong, as well as the Ganga, are fed by seasonal melting of these third poles. Thus, we can understand that melting of glaciers in the third pole region becomes a cause of environmental concern. Now let us understand this area of third pole through a map. Now what is this third pole? It says the region that encompasses the Himalaya Hindu Kush mountain range as well as the Tibetan plateau is widely known as the third pole because its ice fields contain the largest reserve of fresh water outside polar regions. It says that the region is source of the 10 major river systems that provide irrigation, power as well as drinking water to over 1.3 billion people in Asia, which is roughly 20% of the world's population. So we understand that the impact of any climate change on third pole has greater significance. As you can also see in this map that this entire area covered by ice forms a part of third pole, as these areas which are snow clad becomes a source for 10 major river systems. And you can see in this map, although a bit hazy, the important and the major rivers are Mekong, Irrawaddy, Yangtze, Yellow River, Tarim, the Ganges, Indus, even Amu Darya, which flows in the northwest direction. So we understand any environmental threat to this entire area of third pole becomes not only a matter of concern for climate but also impacts the lives as well as livelihood of billions of people residing in this entire region. So in this aspect, let us understand some of the environmental threats which people in this region are currently facing. It says that many countries in the region are suffering serious water stress, while infrastructure projects including dams are raising cross-border tensions, and these may also have severe environmental impacts. So we see certain water crises as well as international concerns over issues of dams. Further, it says that many people in the Himalayan watersheds face high risk from flooding, water shortage as well as pollution. And these risks will be further aggravated because of population growth, climatic variation as well as increasing demands on these scarce water resources both for agriculture as well as industry. So all these cumulatively will further impact the lives as well as livelihoods of billions of people residing in the region. So in this aspect, mitigation as well as adaptation will be necessary, and this will demand high level of international cooperation from different countries of the region. So it is in this respect you must also know about this third pole platform, which is promoting information and also raising awareness with respect to issues related to third pole. It says that the third pole platform is a multilingual platform dedicated to promote information and also discussion about the Himalayan watershed and rivers that originate from these Himalayan watersheds. This project was launched as an initiative of China Dialogue in partnership with the Earth Journalism Network. And this non-profit organization is based in New Delhi as well as London. And this works with an international network of experts, scientists, media professionals, as well as policy makers to share knowledge and perspectives across the region. So effectively, this third pole platform wants to raise awareness and reflects the impacts of climate change on third pole at every level, from poorest communities to the highest reaches of the government, and also aims not only to promote knowledge sharing with respect to awareness but also intend to seek cooperation not only within the region but also on an international level. So this third pole platform, which raises awareness on the impact of climate change on third pole, becomes very important for us to know from a UPSC point of view. Hence, this particular news with respect to environmental threat to third pole becomes extremely significant from our environment perspective. The next news appears on page number 12. The news reads, US to pull out of Russia missile pact. The President Donald Trump accuses Moscow of violating Cold War era INF Treaty by deploying Naweed missile. Now this topic in your prelims examination forms a part of current events of international importance. So in this news, the United States President Donald Trump is considering to withdraw from the INF Treaty, that is Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, that United States had signed with Russia. The US has alleged that Russia is developing a SSC-8 missile that can target Europe. However, this allegation is being denied by Russia. And it is here where US considers development of SSC-8 missile as violation of INF Treaty. The question also arises that why US wants to withdraw from this treaty. Now withdrawal by United States will allow the US new weapon options in the Pacific region, mainly to counter China. So in this aspect, let us also understand about this INF Treaty. So this was a Cold War era treaty signed by the US and Russia in the year 1987. It banned testing as well as possession of short and medium range ground launched nuclear missiles with range of 500 km to 5000 km. So this was what the INF Treaty was all about, basically to ban testing as well as possession of short and medium range ground launched nuclear missile having a range of 500 to 5000 km. Currently, this particular news is in transition, so let us wait and see for US future actions with regards to this particular treaty. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Let's move on to the question for the day.